My name is Kate McMahon. I am a planning consultant with the project and will be presenting this webinar. This webinar provides an overview of key planning trends and how these are being incorporated into growth policies. This mini-seminar will discuss 4 concepts that have been around in the planning profession for a number of years. Recent events, however, have given planners a new perspective on these trends. Each one of these trends could be the subject of a separate hour-long webinar. This webinar will just give a brief overview of each trend, but additional resources are on the Vibrant, and we encourage you to view those. Although communities may be already addressing some of the trends in their growth policies, it would be beneficial if planning documents contained these policies and strategies that reflect each of these 4 concepts: build resiliency, leverage resources, incorporate system thinking, and promote equity. The first trend we are going to review is resiliency. When people think of the term resilient as it applies to cities and towns, they typically think of how the community responds to a natural disaster or catastrophic event. The background photo on this slide is a picture of the golf course in Havre that was flooded last spring. Floodplain regulations have been around since the 70s and are one way that communities try to mitigate and prevent potential disasters. The underlying principle of taking preventative measures to avoid disasters such as floods has been around since the Great Chicago Fire of 1871. But the concept of resiliency has taken on a broader meaning and has become more in vogue since Hurricane Sandy. Today, public officials are looking beyond disaster preparedness to consider what infrastructure and human resources should be in place to help an area recover as quickly as possible from a crisis situation. The concept of resiliency applies not only to natural disasters such as wildfires and floods, but also man-made disasters and economic events. Man-made disasters often refer to failure of essential infrastructure. Recent infrastructure failures that have been in the news include bridge collapses in Minnesota and Washington, and the pipeline leak on the Yellowstone River. Train derailments and massive electrical outages are also man-made disasters that we read about in the news. Economic events are another type of incidents where proactive planning leads to more resilient communities. The recent Great Recession and housing bust are reminders that communities with diverse economies are going to recover much faster when a town loses a major employer or market factors result in an economic downturn. The concept of resiliency is being adopted by many types of organizations. The National Association of Counties has made resiliency a primary focus of the 2014 agenda. As noted in this quote, the principles of resiliency not only help a community recover from catastrophic events, but help to build an overall stronger community and a healthy local economy. This graphic from the Red Cross illustrates the principles that contribute to a resilient community. The center of the circle indicates that a core characteristic of resilient communities is building the knowledge base in order to assess, manage, and monitor risk. The pre-disaster wildfire protection plans and county health assessments are existing tools that provide the risk assessment and include strategies to prepare for potential disasters. Referencing these documents in the growth policy shares this knowledge to a broader audience and helps coordinate these efforts among different stakeholders. Another aspect of knowledge is to build skills through training and professional development to carry out the recommendations in these plans. Other features that the Red Cross identify include a strong organizational structure and well-maintained infrastructure such as roads, power, water, and sewers. As noted earlier, a diverse economy is another feature of resilient communities. And finally, note that the outer ring refers to connections. The most important feature of resilient communities that the Red Cross identified was being connected to other agencies and institutions. These connections allow communities to share resources, to provide support in time of crisis, and to access a broader range of services and supplies. The Vibrant Future Regional Plan can be a valuable tool to provide these connections. The Federal Emergency Management Agency, or FEMA, is also emphasizing resiliency as part of its efforts to promote preparedness and recovery. In 2012, Teton County was a recipient of a Community Resilient Innovation Grant from FEMA. Note that the grant was awarded to a consortium of agencies and counties. This illustrates the importance of connections and how working together can help agencies access resources. Trend number 2 is about leveraging resources. For some time now, due to the recession and economic downturn, local governments have been asked to do more with less. And even though we're in an economic recovery, the sequestration at the federal level has created new challenges for local agencies. As this quote from Governing Magazine indicates, local government will need to be creative and leverage multiple types of resources to meet their needs. The Partnership for Sustainability that includes HUD, EPA, and the U.S. Department of Transportation emphasizes 6 livability principles. Coordinating policies and leveraging investment is one of those principles. This graphic describes the different policies and strategies for leveraging resources. Local government and agencies may already be employing some of these strategies, but given the do more with less climate, these strategies become even more important. One benefit of the regional plan is that it will help communities in the region be more competitive in leveraging funds from grants. Also, these strategies can help communities in developing their growth policies. The Montana Code Annotated requires that growth policies include a description of public infrastructure strategies. This section in the growth policy would be a good place to include the strategies that are listed on this slide. Following is an overview of just a few of these strategies to help a community leverage resources. As noted by this quote from the Montana Department of Transportation, partnering is an excellent strategy to leverage resources. In the scenario planning workshop that were conducted as part of the regional plan process, we documented a wide variety of partnerships in the region that can be enhanced and used as models for other communities. Another very effective way for local governments to leverage resources is through a Capital Improvement Plan, or CIP. As part of the Vibrant Futures project, we reviewed 23 growth policies in the region. Of these 23 documents, only about half of them mentioned a capital improvement plan. A CIP should be referenced as part of the growth policy's public infrastructure strategy. If the community does not have a CIP, the growth policy should recommend that one be developed. Many agencies that oversee infrastructure grants, such as CTEP, or the Treasure State Endowment Program, require a current CIP be adopted before they will fund a project. The third trend we are going to discuss references system thinking. It is not uncommon for communities to confront an issue as a standalone problem and then try to fix the problem without considering all of the consequences. This is often an approach and can result in an inefficient use of scarce budget resources. The system thinking approach looks at the issue as part of a larger system and considers how the problems relate to other components in the system. It then attempts to develop a comprehensive approach. The following slides will illustrate how different systems might work in the context of city planning. This slide shows the relationship between housing costs, transportation costs, and land use. In the past, affordable housing was measured only by what households were paying for rent or mortgage. This resulted in housing developments that were built on cheaper land, but were located on the outskirts of town and away from jobs and services. Although the rent and mortgage were lower, transportation costs increased because of longer driving distances. When these factors are considered as part of a system, the importance of locating housing near services and employment centers or providing transit to reduce transportation costs become more evident. This slide illustrates a system thinking approach to integrated water management. As noted in this slide, if different infrastructure components such as stormwater management, wastewater facilities, drinking water systems, and open space are managed in an integrated fashion, there are numerous benefits. Some of these benefits that are listed on the slide include lower water treatment costs, flood control benefits, better water quality, and improved fisheries. When the system is viewed from a watershed perspective, these benefits are multiplied many times over. In response to the obesity epidemic, health officials have begun to look at how community design features may or may not facilitate better fitness. Designing cities to improve access to parks and making it easier to walk to schools or walk to jobs or stores is one way to encourage residents to get outdoors and adopt a more active lifestyle. An active lifestyle is directly correlated to better health and results in lower costs to treat chronic diseases. Now we'll review some sample policies that reflect this system thinking approach, and you might want to consider including these in your next growth policy update. The policies include local developments close to services to reduce the amount of households. Consider transit options as part of affordable housing developments. Encourage active lifestyles with trails and sidewalk connections between parks. Reduce impervious areas in new developments to minimize stormwater runoff and improve water quality. Protect wetlands to provide flood control and to improve water quality by acting as a filter for stormwater runoff. The final trend in this presentation deals with the issue of equity. This is a term that means different things to different people depending on the context. For purposes of this presentation, we're referring to the definition from the National Academy of Public Administration. That's located at the bottom of this slide. But this definition emphasizes fairness and justice. Another way to describe it is that no one group is overlooked or treated unfairly when designing or administering public programs. Although this seems like a straightforward concept, often communities struggle to translate this idea into policy. To clarify what this means for your community, it might be worthwhile to consider including the following statements about equity in your growth policy. This first policy here describes, directs local officials to consider the design and impacts of a program for all segments of the population. For example, this may mean that parks should include not only active recreation features like playgrounds for young people, but also passive recreation areas such as benches and gardens for senior citizens. Parks should also include accessible features like handicap fishing access for the disabled population. Another way to apply this policy is to look at the impact of fee structures. More often, communities are relying on user fees to pay new services. If low-income households can't afford the user fees, however, a segment of the population is excluded from the program, and this raises equity issues. The flip side of the user fee policy is not to assess any fees for development impacts. In this case, the cost is passed on to taxpayer, and this can be an equity issue. Balancing these costs to create an equitable fee system should be thoroughly discussed. Another policy regarding equity is the fair application of codes. Although most local governments make every effort to apply codes and regulations fairly, it is worthwhile to routinely review procedures and make sure your agency is exercising due diligence to achieve this goal. Tools like checklists and procedure manuals to make sure that rules are applied consistently and that the community is complying with open meeting laws or freedom of information requirements are simple methods to more effectively administer regulations. All households should have equal access to services. Fair Housing Ordinance and the American with Disability Act, known as ADA, are laws that have been enacted to ensure this access. Only a handful of growth policies in the region, however, had policies that It would be useful to reinforce the concept of equity if growth policies explicitly referenced these programs and referenced equal access to services. Finally, another equity issue is making land use decisions so that one group or neighborhood doesn't have to bear the brunt of adverse impacts from a high-intensity use. In the past, it was not uncommon to locate heavy industrial uses, or what is known as locally adjacent to low-income neighborhoods. This sometimes happened when there was no organized opposition in an area, or it happened in areas where property values may already be depressed, so local officials didn't expect much impact on the tax base and saw no harm in improving such high-impact uses. Such practices, however, do not consider the noise, pollution, traffic, and other health safety concerns that are supposed to be the primary concerns in making land use decisions. The Montana Supreme Court has overturned a number of zoning actions when health safety concerns are ignored. It is important to consider balancing these impacts when you make land use decisions and considering the equity issue. So in conclusion, when updating the growth policy, considering adding goals, objectives, policies, and strategies to address the following planning trends: resiliency, leveraging of resources, systems thinking, and equity. Thank you for your participation in this webinar. Please check out other webinars on the growth policies at the Vibrant Future website.